Welcome to the next episode of Revolutionary Talk. We're on episode 4 in our Wellness Downfall series. Bad influences. Have any?
Yeah, well, first off, how does an influence differ from a habit? I think that's a great question.
Oh, I think influence is more of an external thing, and a habit's more of an internal choice.
Yeah. So who or what around you creates influences that are less than good?
Less than good? Well, I'd like to think that I've been able to kind of weed a lot of those influences out over the years.
But as you raise your vibe and you grow and develop, stuff that you thought was once a good influence slowly becomes a bad influence.
Yes.
What about that curveball?
Yeah, I mean, because you resonate with certain things or certain people for a period of time to help you grow, and then, or grow at the time so you think.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a bad influence, ends up being in retrospect. But then they get to that point where, okay, everything's split off. And then looking back, it's like, okay, was that a good thing or a not so great thing?
Right.
Was that influencing for me for my greatest purpose? Or was that a hurdle that kind of took me off track for a moment that, okay, now I'm aware of it. Now how do I get back onto that track that I'm supposed to be on?
Yeah, because sometimes I feel like a bad influence per se is like momentarily, like it's so based on like circumstantial base, because something that is a bad influence today, I mean, as you grow, you're continually getting better and better and better, and something that was a good influence at the time slowly becomes that bad influence, and then you're endlessly like, oh no, that was really good, and then you're like, no, I've grown, like I'm so much, your friend circles do the same thing too.
Yeah.
People that you're like, man, that's such a good influence. 2 years down the road, you're like, gosh, how did I ever think that was a good influence? But where you're at that time and space is essential to kind of the perspective of the whole idea.
Oh, it's crazy, and I don't know. There are a bunch of different directions to go with this one. It's interesting how, like, over time, like, the same person, like you kind of mentioned, could be a good influence, but eventually it could be somebody that's, like, holding you back.
Yeah.
And then what do you do at that point? It's kind of interesting. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they, like, started a wellness journey with you, so they're kind of a good influence, but they get to a point where they're stagnant.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I want to keep progressing. And, what do? You just have to, do you ditch them? Or you, like, try to be their good influence?
Yeah.
And help them.
That's a sword. That's a double-sided sword there.
Yeah.
Because there is that point, too, where you endlessly do keep growing, or your habits keep growing, or your influence keep growing, and then you're like, almost like, if that influence isn't, helping you out anymore, is it at a time that you cut it out? Or you're like, hey, like, let me help influence you in a good way to bring you back up to this level, too. Because, I mean, it's all just keeps going.
Yeah, but then at that point, if you're trying to reach back and help people also get to your level, it could be exhausting.
But so then flip that, though. So if you're in a spot that's a bad influence and somebody comes in and creates a good influence for you,
it's energizing.
Yeah, it's energizing, but it's holding them back.
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
I mean, there's a lot of contemplation here. I mean, it's so like circumstantial based and perceptual based. Wow.
Yeah.
So do you guys,
I don't know.
do you have any current bad influences in your life right now?
Well, for some reason, my mind just goes to people first, which, it's kind of interesting. I didn't necessarily think that was the only direction to go, which it definitely isn't the only direction, but that's kind of one that comes to mind. I mean, with some family and friends around, I feel like people in general are a little less motivated than I am.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, why are you so, I don't know, stagnant's a word that comes to mind, but like just less motivated, less drive, and
because then that's
kind of that's the thing that frustrates me, and it's like I have to try to look to other people that aren't like that and not let their energy affect mine, if that makes sense.
Yeah. See, one of the bad influences that I worked on cutting out is like music. music that isn't creating a higher vibration or a higher, sound. Like for instance, I love listening to Odessa. It just like kind of gets me going. Or Big Wild are two that I love because it just creates such a higher vibe. But there's times that I used to listen to like rap music that was like endlessly like devaluing people, like saying bad, like endlessly creating this influence in your life subconsciously through listening to it at the gym. And as soon as I cut that out, it's funny, my workouts kind of went down, but my vibration went up. And it's been a weird little journey of its own because it's like it's so influential, but as soon as you cut out that music, you see yourself kind of getting away from those tendencies that they're projecting towards you
in all those subtle ways.
Yeah. Same thing with like media and watching shows and whatnot. I'm very careful about what I watch and like what my intention is of watching it because I'll feel myself start absorbing and pulling that into my lifestyle. And I'm like, all right, if I want to work on business, wouldn't it be great to watch a show over business that shows you how to build?
Yeah, that's another good one. That brings up, so music, big one. I think you hit on that one well enough. But so like during the day, I always have to have some sort of background noise. And like sometimes I go with music, but other times like I like to have a show going on in the background whether I'm learning about something or it's kind of entertainment as I'm working. But I've had to be picky and choosy with shows because there are times like obviously people in real life kind of slow you down like energy wise, but there are times too I've been listening to shows that, whether it's like a comedy based or whatever, and I don't know, they're like lazy people, right? So that like kind of rubs off on me. I'm like, man, why am I so like slow today?
Yeah.
So I've had to cut out shows and be like really picky and choosy with, what's going on in the background.
Yeah. I like that though, that you said you like listen to podcasts because it's like if your brain's craving media and that could be like a bad influence, finding like a good influence to feed that, temptation, push through with it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, these are good ones. Any others that negatively influence us?
I would say no. I just say content, music, and people, or your environment too. Environment's big too. I mean, sometimes for instance, if I'm working on like a motivational video, I'm not doing it at a bar where everybody's kind of like, I might put myself around people that are very inspirational or like use my environment to help feed the creativity of the project too. It's like your environment's huge. Your environment kind of sets like whether you're safe or unsafe, and that's a huge influence too.
That's a good one.
Yeah, where your focus is. If that's not in a good, comfortable space, and how can you be creative and have all that energy flowing to make it happen?
That's a good one. Ooh, that got deep. All right. I'm sure you all can relate to many of these bad influences, so hopefully you can work through them, cut them out if you have to, and then work to find better influences in your life. So next week, we'll be moving this series on to stress, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. We'll see you soon.